Good evening, everybody. I see that Councillor Barker is improperly dressed. Again. But if you would like to take off your jackets, that's perfectly in order.
More than I needed to yesterday.
Right, if we're ready then, please. Are there any apologies? Thank you. Thank you. Have we got any declarations of interest? Right, we move on to the minutes of the council meeting of the 20th of July. Will someone move the minutes? Will someone second them? Thank you. Right, now we come to announcements from the Mayor. Councillors, we'll start with some basic housekeeping. Members have been provided with a pack of additional papers for consideration this evening. The first is a minute extract from the Council Cabinet following last Wednesday's meeting. That is already on the agenda at item 9 and will be considered then. There are also 2 late items marked A and B in the pack. I propose that we consider these immediately after the other reports for our consideration, but prior to the councillor motion, so between items 12 and 13. On the subject of housekeeping, I have increasingly noted members wanting to move amendments to motions verbally or by scribbling a few lines on a scrap of paper. Not only is this unfair on the officers who are supposed to interpret and capture this information, but it also increases the risk of misunderstanding or misinterpretation. We have the yellow amendment forms. There are a pile of them to my right at the front of the dais. If you wish to move an amendment, I would ask that you submit it properly using the forms. Thank you. Councillors will be aware that a consultation has been undertaken on the city's electoral cycle. This consultation has now ended and we will soon be presented with the outcomes. We must then determine the matter, which requires a vote before an extraordinary meeting of the council. So, not to add to an extra evening, I propose that we schedule the meeting at 6 p.m. on Wednesday the 23rd of November, and that is replaced by the extraordinary meeting. We will then proceed with an ordinary meeting immediately afterwards. I will ask officers to finalise timings and notify you over the coming days. You will also be aware that subject to the outcome of the late report before you on the freedom of the city, we may need to have another extraordinary meeting. Again, I will update you on that as the situation develops. Councillors, it is my sad duty to report to you the passing of David Whitehead, who served this city as the Labour councillor for Chellaston. During his time as a councillor, David served as deputy mayor in 2002 to 2003 and would most likely have graduated to become mayor, except that the election results did not go in his favour in 2003. I was pleased to be able to attend David's funeral and was joined by Councillor Jackson and the Mayor's officer Colette Flood in paying our respects on behalf of the council. Would anyone like to speak about David before we observe a moment's silence? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. David joined the council as you say, councillor for Chellaston in 1994. And 1 year later, I joined him 1995. So David was the first councillor that I served with. He was very much a community man in Chellaston. He was president of the British Legion. He was a magistrate for the city. His wife, June, she did an awful lot in the area, particularly for old people, organising events for them. So that would certainly leave a gap with his passing. His greatest joy, though, was really driving around on his steam engines and his tractors. He'd go all over the place just for the pleasure of doing this. And in his caravan. Caravan went everywhere. I think they spent more time in the caravan in the summer than they did in their own home. But David was a councillor, as you say, for several years. Unfortunately, he didn't become the mayor. I think actually on 2 occasions he was deputy mayor. I'm not sure whether I have that right. But anyway, it's very sad to hear that he has passed away. And I was very pleased to be able to attend his funeral last Friday with you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Oops.
Does anybody else want to say anything? In that case, then, let's stand to observe a moment's silence for David. And now for something completely different and much brighter. For many years, the Council has granted the Civic Award to a person who has made an outstanding contribution to the city. This year, I have chosen to grant the award to a person who you may have read about already in the press, a resident of our city who has dedicated a great many hours, rallied fellow locals and led the revival of the former Wilmorton allotment site so that it was able to reopen 40 years after its closure. The individual concerned recognised the potential of the derelict land, created the Wilmorton Residents Association, and in his role as chair led its transformation. The revival of the allotments has not just brightened up the area, but also served to create a community focus, which has brought people together and instilled a sense of renewed pride in the locality. At a time when funding is scarce and our neighbourhoods are being encouraged to take ownership of their local communities, this individual has led by example. He has already been celebrated as a community champion by our friends in the media, and of all the worthy winners in that competition, I am delighted to have selected him to be our Civic Award winner. Fellow councillors, please join me in applauding the efforts of our Civic Award winner, Simon Lee. We come to statements from members of the Council Cabinet, and there are none. Right, now it's questions from the public to members of the Council Cabinet. We have 10 questions. As normal, where responses have been provided in advance, then only a supplementary question will be asked at the meeting. Where a response hasn't been provided, then both the opening and supplementary question will be put. We have been notified that Mr. Brendan Connolly, who is due to ask 2 questions, cannot attend. He has requested that any questions he would have put be asked instead by Mr. Rob Cooper. This is permitted under Rule CP 26 and CP 28. So the first one is... I'm just looking for it, yeah. Yeah. Mrs. Skrytek, is she here? No? No? Okay. Right then, question B. Mrs. King, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Hussain? Do we have... Oh, right, no, Mrs. King. Could be bake-off tonight. Right, question C. Mr. Cooper, I know you're here. Do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
No, Madam Mayor.
Right. Mrs. Morrison, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
Yes. Will it be to Olympic standard? Will the swimming pool be to Olympic standard? Thank you. Will the Moorways swimming pool be to Olympic standard?
Thank you very much for your question. Councillor Shankar and myself are working very hard on plans for the new moorways, and we're getting ideas from all around the country, best practice, to make sure that what we have in Derby is a really excellent facility, and it certainly will be a 50-metre pool. So we'll keep you updated with more information as the plans develop. Yeah, the length, 50 metres, will be Olympic standard, yes.
Right, thank you. Right, Mr. Cooper, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Eldred on
yes,
behalf
please,
of
Madam
Mr. Connolly?
Given that the offer on the 9th of September was rejected and there was an all-out strike today lobbying Westminster with cross-party support, what are the next steps that will bring this to a resolution to the satisfaction of the school support staff and which will mitigate the 25% pay cut?
We were very disappointed that the strike went ahead today, Madam Mayor. As people will be aware, we put a revised offer to Unison when we met them last Friday. We doubled our previous offer, which we really hoped would bring an end to the dispute and a resolution to this situation, because we wanted to avoid what happened today, which was disruption in schools, disruption to parents, disruption to children, and that is our main aim. It was therefore very disappointing to us that rather than agreeing to take that offer back to their members to enable them to decide whether or not they thought it was a reasonable offer, Unison decided instead to go ahead with industrial action today and not put that offer to their members. Thank you for the question. The reality is that we absolutely want to see a resolution to this situation and the ongoing dispute. We cannot, however, negotiate whilst there is ongoing industrial action. We're calling on Unison to call off the further strikes that they have planned so that we can get back round the table. We really want to find a resolution, and we encourage them to do that, and we encourage them to take the offer that we've put to their members and let them make a decision.
Thank you. Mr. Bacon, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Russell?
I have, Madam Mayor, yes. Councillor Russell, At the Community Liaison Group meeting, the Waste Education Officer directly confirmed what she tells school children, and that is minuted in the meetings as being a recovery plant, which is not what the plant is. Is it acceptable to mislead school children?
I'm not sure what response you expect me to give to that, Mr Bacon. Of course it's not acceptable to mislead school children. I'm not going to get into the technicalities about the classification of the waste plant with you here tonight, Mr Bacon. If you want to delve deeper into that, then I'm sure officers will be available to answer any questions you may have.
Mr Cooper, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. How is the War Memorial going to be funded, Councillor Rawson?
I understand that it's Councillor Pegg's telling me where he's the hard work that he's done in order to attract the funding. It's actually from Section 106. So I'd like to pay tribute to Councillor Pegg and the other Mackworth councillors who've worked so hard to deliver this for Mackworth.
Mrs Morrison, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
I don't really see the point. Thank you.
Mr Cooper, no response has been submitted here. Would you like to ask the opening question on behalf of Mr Connolly?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Would Councillor Banwaite like to take this opportunity to apologise for the comments he made in this chamber that Councillor Graves, to quote, is a disgusting, despicable individual?
Mr Cooper, can you stick to the original question, please?
You need to ask the original question first.
Okay.
That's my question.
Mr Cooper, can you ask the original question first, please?
You asked for my supplementary. You want the original question that Councillor Banwaite is yet to answer? After recent press coverage, Councillor Banwaite said he has done everything he can to create a better working relationship within the council. Does he now think that personal attacks by him within the council chamber to fellow councillors are now over? And can he give assurances his recent behaviour will stop?
Yes, thank you for that question, Mr Cooper. Well, we've been absolutely clear that this administration will work with any councillor across party in the interest of this great city. However, I have to say we've been disappointed since austerity and government cuts began. The failure of opposition parties to come forward with anything constructive, any alternative to the budget challenges that the city faces. They play politics with the budget, but not put forward any viable alternatives, whether that's the poor attendance at budget consultation meetings or the opportunities that they've been given to work with officers to put forward an alternative budget. So I put that to you. You are a UKIP supporter, you've been a UKIP candidate, you're here promoting UKIP, I ask you to take that back to your colleagues in UKIP and the meetings that you have to say, look, come up with some viable alternatives, costed alternatives, and we'd be happy to work with them on that and consider that. I am, however, hopeful that actually we can work together, and one such example is I'm pleased with the commitment that the leader of UKIP has given to support the change in the electoral cycle in order to save taxpayers' money, and UKIP will be given that opportunity to deliver on that commitment at the full council in November, and I look forward to working with them on that. Thank you.
Mr Cooper, would you now like to ask a supplementary question to Councillor Banwaite on behalf of Mr
Would
Connolly?
Councillor Banwaite like to take this opportunity to apologise for the comments he made in this chamber that Councillor Graves is a disgusting...
Can we have an actual question, please?
That's my supplementary question, Madam Mayor.
Mr Bacon, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
I have, Madam Mayor, but I'm a little bit confused, which is not difficult at times. My question was in relation to fly-tip enforcement. Is that Councillor Afzal's cabinet role, or am I asking the right person? I thought Councillor Shanker had dealt with fly-tip enforcement, but... Does anybody know?
Mr Bacon, as you're fully aware, we work quite closely, and I work with you and with the local schools and other interested parties in and around Arboretum and Normanton, as you stated in your question. But what we really do need is people actually working together to provide the evidence so we can actually take people and prosecute them. So I know you're saying it's enforcement, but enforcement's only as good as the evidence that we can actually provide for them. So hopefully we will all continue to work together, gather that evidence and start seeing some prosecutions.
Questions for the Derbyshire Fire Authority or Derby Homes? We have none. You have asked your question. He's already answered the question. It's Councillor Afzal. Very well, you may ask that question.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. That is greatly appreciated. Oh, that's even better now, isn't it? Thank you very much. God, I sound like Elvis. No? Thank you very much. Right, no, right, let's moving on. It's bad, isn't it? Right. Councillor Afzal, noting the bullet points in your reply, it took the council 20 days to remove fly tip waste that I reported in Normanton, and your Environmental Services Department never replied on the subject. And as a member of the Normanton Empowerment team, I meet residents regularly who feel trapped. It's coming. It's a bit like laying an egg. I've also met people who've provided evidence which goes nowhere. You're failing residents. Can you confirm any new plans to address the dire situation? Thank you.
Well, I'm a bit disappointed, Mr Bacon, that you actually say you've had evidence and you've approached the council, so I'm quite happy to meet you outside the meeting, look at the evidence, and if we've got enough evidence, I'll ensure that we do actually take appropriate action to bring these people to court or whatever needs to be done. Thank you.
Now we have questions from non-council cabinet members. Councillor Evans, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
I do, Madam Mayor. Councillor Afzal, the people suffering are the residents of City Point, whilst the council and developers continue seemingly endless communications. I look forward to seeing yourself and Derby City Council actively pursue the developer, as stated in your last paragraph. Can you
Is this a question?
Can you?
Is this a question?
Now. Yes, I'm finished now. Can you reassure me that you will personally be actively involved in pursuing that end with the developers? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your question, Councillor Evans. And it's like you're repeating exactly what Paul Bayliss has been saying to me for the past few weeks and months and everything. And I can assure you, we will try our best to get the developers around the table and get them to do the right thing, because the ball's in their court and no residents should be suffering. And believe you me, Paul Bayliss has been very active in this, and I'm glad you're jumping on the bandwagon as well.
Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Orson? Councillor Holmes, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Will you pledge tonight, Councillor Afzal, that investment in highways maintenance and improvements across the city will be fair and equally shared across all of Derby's wards and on behalf of all of the local taxpayers? Thank you.
Well, I think that's very clear anyway, Councillor Holmes. We can't do anything else. We've got to treat all roads and everything equally. So, yes, well, safeguarding issues not a problem. Everybody will be...
Councillor Barker, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Orson?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Orson, I do thank you for your answer I'd question, however, the necessity to issue the urgent notification of this Cabinet decision and bypassing the scrutiny as a result, which may well have exasperated the current malaise in the negotiations. But the supplementary relates to information that as a result of these detailed or now detailed negotiations going ahead, I'm told by traders that they are now all out of lease and as a result are very concerned as to their future. Will Councillor Rawson now categorically state that no trader will be disadvantaged by the negotiations underway and their livelihood will be protected accordingly?
Thank you, Councillor Barker. I do appreciate that the extended nature of the negotiations is having an effect on the traders in the Eagle market, and it's in everyone's interest to come to a conclusion as quickly as we can. My understanding of the position is that their existing leases are being rolled forward on the existing terms and conditions, so there will be no disadvantage to any of the traders.
The next questions from Councillors Graves and Harwood will be answered collectively as they relate to the same matter. Councillor Graves, would you like to ask your opening question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following the monitoring officer's ruling in regard to the previous mayor, namely failed to treat the residents of New Zealand Residents Association with respect by providing incorrect information to them, damage to the reputation of the office of the Mayor of the City of Derby, and used his position as Mayor of the City of Derby to his advantage, do you think it's right to react to this situation by changing the Mayor's diary from being a public document to being secret?
Thank you. Councillor Harwood, would you like to ask your opening question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to have heard the answer to that first, though. Madam Mayor, the Derby Evening Derby Telegraph get notification. All right, why are the Mayor's engagements no longer being sent out to the members?
Thank you. Both questions will be answered at the same time. Thank you. Councillor Banwaite, would you please respond?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors. My understanding is the information is publicly available.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Graves?
Well, it may be a public document, but it's not easily available. We used to have the Mayor's diary sent to us by email on a regular basis. I think it's every week. That doesn't happen anymore, so I understand that the Mayor's diary is not being sent out publicly.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Hall?
Yes, Madam Mayor. In view of the fact that the Derby Telegraph are getting the Mayor's engagement sent to them weekly still, and the members aren't, why can't the members still get notification? And I say this, recently we had a lady who was 100 in Oakwood, and no notification was made. Consequently, the lady got poor representation regarding that. Can I have an assurance, please, that any events or engagements by the Mayor in Oakwood are sent to the Oakwood councillors prior to the engagement, please, if you're not sending them out as before?
Just before I ask Councillor Banwaite to answer that, I have to tell you that the engagements are not sent to the Telegraph. Councillor Banwaite.
Madam Mayor, may I say I spoke to the Telegraph yesterday and they said there were.
Councillor Banwaite, do you want to respond to that?
Madam Mayor, councillors, I stand by with what I've just said. The information is publicly available. And can I just say, as councillors, your group officers are literally opposite member services. My colleagues in member services are sat here. You walk past them in the corridor. You can ask them that question. But you haven't asked them that question. You've come into this council chamber to ask that question. I just can't understand that. So the information is publicly available. It's not a secret. These aren't the plans you know, the big secret plans that you might allude to. These are about very simple matters, and you can ask of officers, and they are publicly available.
Thank you, Councillor Van Waite. Councillor Grimmadale, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. Good evening, Councillor Rawson. Thank you for your answer to my question. It is many years since someone has accused me of being premature. Thank you. You state that this Labour administration is planning to keep all the libraries open. Thank you, that's very good news. And if very few community volunteers come forward, what then? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimmadale. I won't ask who the last person who called you premature was. That's probably going a bit too far, but thank you very much for your question. I'm a lot more optimistic than you seem to be, Councillor Grimmadale, about the good people of Derby. I really do think they will rise to the challenge of coming forward, of volunteering and taking a full and active part in the running of libraries in the future. And of course it falls to all of us as elected members to play our part as well, particularly if we have a library in our ward, in terms of trying to generate interest and enthusiasm from members of the public. So I hope all councillors will also play their part.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
These prime high-profile sites should not be laid to waste for years to come, as with other well-known assets around the city. Will the Cabinet member confirm the timescales and the current estimate of costs for the demolition and marketing of both the wholesale and livestock market sites? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hudson. In respect of the cattle market, a decision has been made. As my answer says, we're in the process of communicating the decision in terms of the wholesale market to traders, and it wouldn't be appropriate to bypass that position. I'm certainly in agreement with you that this site doesn't shouldn't be standing empty because of the financial position this council's in, because of the government cuts that Councillor Grimmadale's nodding. Yeah, the Conservative government cuts. We need to make make the best of all our assets, and we will be moving forward with the sale of the cattle market as quickly as we possibly can. On the topic of asset transfer, we were criticised not so long ago by the Conservative group for in terms of Roman House, so it's really pleasing to see the students have moved in there this week who are contributing to a lively and vibrant city centre in Derby. So that's a really good example of where we've managed to move things on.
Thank you. Councillor Poulter, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. Councillor Afzal, I wasn't surprised that the answer was it's all down to government cuts. The fact is that this is a choice you've actually made. Councillor Afzal, is it the case that you have chosen to make these decisions in relation to neighbourhood working, and it's an extension of your policy to direct council resources and funding to Labour-controlled areas purely for political purposes? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question, Councillor Poulter. We've been here before, and I'll be honest with you, you talk about savings. I mean, to me, a saving is if I've got £2,000 and if I want to go on a holiday or something, and I've been on holiday already and I need to go another one, I'll have to save that money. I've already got that money to save. But this council's having to make cuts that we've never made before because of your government. Your masters in Westminster are the ones who made this decision. You've been elected to serve the people of Derby, Councillor Poulter, so can I suggest you sign up for our fair deal for Derby, and if we get that additional fair deal that we're supposed to be getting, and talking about picking, all we're doing is trying to make the best of what your government has left us with. So you should apologise and actually get up there to Westminster. You're supposed to be having an active local MP, and your new Prime Minister has actually said this government is not for the privileged but for everybody. So why don't you prove it? Write to your government, sign up for our fair deal for Derby. Let's get what Derby deserves, and we won't have to be making these decisions. These are not easy decisions to make, so the ball's back in your court, mate. Sort it out.
Councillor Smale, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
I do, Madam Mayor. Can Councillor Rawson tell me that if you don't know the exact cost for each individual library at the moment, how can this go out to consultation without proper figures at the moment? Thank you.
Well, the consultation's not on the detailed budgets that are required. That will form part of the next stage, and as my written answer says, Councillor Smale, there's still a little bit more work to do in terms of getting that very detailed information, and that can then be provided to interested groups as they come forward following the consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Shankar?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Can Councillor Shankar advise the Chamber what the budget allocation is for this pre-assessment activity?
I can't give you the exact figure, Councillor Graves, but there is a budget allocation for the feasibility study and the business case review. These visits, the cost of the site visits is a very, very small amount of the overall budget for a very, very big, exciting project for the people of Derby.
Councillor Evans, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councillor Rawson, can you expand about the progress made in the contact that was made with the developer, and are you going to rigorously pursue obtaining this Section 106 funding? Can I just also state that Ulverston Neighbourhood Board has already agreed this funding. Well, it's agreed the funding. It states that they're going to decide to use it for
Can we stick to the question, please, Mr Evans?
Yeah. I'm saying it's not good enough that Section 106 money was signed in March 2015, and here we are nearly 18 months later without the funding.
Councillor Rawson, would you like to respond to the question?
Thank you, Councillor Evans, for your question. I think the authority in general has a very good track record of receiving Section 106 money and making sure that we receive all the money that is due. In this case, I can give the commitment to make sure that it's pursued, and I'm sure it will be resolved very soon.
Councillor Harwood, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor
Yes, Madam Mayor. First, I'd like to say that in the earlier question, the Leader of the Council stated that he wished other parties would help in making decisions for the Council. Well, I'm very pleased to say I've done that, because I notice in the answer I've got to my question, the officer has put in exactly what I put to him in a telephone conversation. So I'm pleased that I had some input there. My question: can you assure me, Councillor Hatzer, that the residents of Oakwood will be given the same service that is given to the other wards in the city?
Yes, Councillor Howard. As long as everybody, each ward, nobody will be left behind. So we're all striving to become Oakwood sort of thing. So why not?
Councillor Hudson, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
I do, thank you, Madam Mayor. Is it the case that you have presided over a long-term policy of deliberate mismanagement of this site to achieve a position whereby all existing leases come to an end? You could then declare the site not economically viable to run and therefore enable you to proceed with your plan to dispose of the site in order to obtain a capital receipt. Has this been done without any regard of the cost to traders' livelihoods and the total loss of this asset to the city? Thank you.
No, that's not true, Councillor Hudson.
Councillor Graves, would you like to ask your opening question to Councillor Banwaite?
Thank you. I do like these verbal answers because it does get my question out verbally. I do like that. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Banwaite. Unfortunately, the Labour Party pushed through a decision to neutralise future petitions at our last council meeting by preventing any that involve budget decisions or mentioning anyone's name. However, it should not stop residents from trying to present these to the council. So can the Cabinet Member explain why the Labour Council banned all petitions to save our libraries from being available in our libraries? Bearing in mind that this is where most signatures are likely to come from, your actions are following a pattern of Big Brother shutting down anything that opposes the hierarchy.
Councillor Grave, there are no plans to close any libraries.
Councillors, can we play nicely and quietly, please? Thank you. Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary for Councillor Banwaite?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The consultation says that there's going to be closure of libraries. The question was why you would stop any petitions being allowed to be presented in a library.
Councillor Graves, as I've just said, it's my understanding we're going through a consultation. There are no plans to close any libraries. As Councillor Rawson has said, our desire is to find alternative ways of delivering the library service.
Councillor Evans, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Shankar?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'll be short this time. Councillor Shankar, we were previously told that court proceedings would take place by the end of July. We're now in September. Why the delay?
Councillor Evans, there's a number of reasons for the delays. There is a statutory duty that we have to make sure the area is safe. There's processes which we are going through to bring this matter to resolution as quickly as we can. But can I just say one further thing, Councillor Evans, and I appreciate you're being mentored by Councillor Graves, but this isn't the place for your casework. There's a number of skilled, dedicated officers of this council who would gladly answer these questions rather than you just grandstanding here and trying to copy Councillor Graves. Thank you.
Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson? Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Repton?
Yes. I can give you an absolute assurance, Councillor Graves, that councillors were not involved in any way in the decision with regard to the flexible lease arrangement. And certainly, and that includes myself and other councillors as well. Thank you.
Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson? Ditto. Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson? Right. Right, now we come to the minutes of the Council Cabinet requiring Council approval. Would anyone like to speak on these, or shall we move them? Seconded? Thank you. Right, we come to pay policy. We have before us a report of the Chief Executive. Would anybody like to speak on this, or can it be moved? Seconder? And we have an annual report of the Standards Committee. Would anyone like to speak on this, or can it be moved?
Moved as printed, Madam Mayor.
Moved. Okay, seconded? Yeah, thank you. Right. Appointment to Derbyshire Environmental Trust. We have before us a report of the monitoring officer. Would anybody like to speak on this, or can it be moved? Seconded? Okay. I now propose to take the late item on building control. This is a report of the Strategic Director of Communities and Place. Would anybody like to speak on this, or can it be moved? Seconded? Fabulous. I now propose to take the late item on the freedom of the city. This is a report of the Leader of the Council. Councillor Banwaite, would you like to address Council?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, we'll all now be familiar with the excellent news reporting from the Olympics, the achievements of Adam Peaty. Not just in the Olympics, but his record speaks for itself. The awards, the honours, the medals, whether it's breaking world records or being named European Swimmer of the Year and World Swimmer of the Year. Adam's connection to Derby through the sports club that he's been representing has honoured us all, anybody connected to the city. Now, the Freedom of the City Award is the greatest civic award that this council, or any council in the country, can award any citizen. The last time it was awarded was to Brian Clough. Now, that in itself was a tremendous honour for Brian. We have another opportunity, Madam Mayor, to recognise great achievement for the city, for Adam. And for me, it's not just about what Adam's achieved personally, but it's the symbolism. This is an opportunity to inspire young people for generations to come. There are many young people in our city that are desired and ambitious themselves to go on in, whether it's sport or in academia or it's in the world of work. So this is an opportunity for us, Madam Mayor, to recognise what Adam's achieved, but also to strike a symbol for generations of young people to come, Madam Mayor. So this is an award, Mr Mayor, that I think we as a council, cross-party, should award Adam Peaty, and that would also involve organising a civic reception, not just for Adam Peaty, but the numerous other sporting athletes that have achieved great things in the recent Olympics, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Repton, you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I just want to quickly echo what Councillor Banway said. Adam Peaty certainly has brought immense pride to this city. And I heard his mother on Radio Derby saying how proud she was and he was that we were contemplating offering this award to him. I remember that day when Brian Clough received the Freedom of the City, and I was at Pride Park Stadium with other people, I think, in this room and perhaps no longer with us, and how proud he was to be granted that freedom. And when Mrs Peaty was talking about Derby, she said the importance of the great people of Derby, what they played in helping them achieve that success. And she and he would be eternally grateful to this city, and that's why, if it was offered to him, they'd be immensely proud. And I think Derby does, despite all the doom and gloom says, Derby does have a bright future. We see a renaissance in inner city living. We see our athletes receiving these golden awards. And I think together, as we move forward in a positive way, it's a great way to celebrate the tremendous success of this young man. And I hope we'll all be unanimous in supporting it this evening. Thank you.
Any other speakers? No? Yeah, can we move to the vote then, please? All those in favour? Looks if that's been carried then. Thank you. Now we come to the motion on electoral fraud. We only have one motion on the agenda. Councillor Skelton, would you like to address council?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I hope that members have had the opportunity of actually reading the report called Securing the Ballot. The investigation that led up to this report was carried out by the author Sir Eric Pickles, and it was done in response to the Tower Hamlets legal case, where unfortunately outrageous fraud and corruption were taking place not only in the sphere of elections but also in other areas of council activity, and all that was well documented in the national media. The report itself is a wake-up call to everyone. There are serious weaknesses in our processes and laws surrounding the electoral process, and it can change the results. It only does take a small number of determined people to subvert the electoral process, which can then change the results and outcomes of elections, and therefore hand considerable power to illegitimate winners. In the report, Sir Eric makes reference numerous times to Tower Hamlets. He says that electoral fraud is intertwined with other forms of crime, and he makes the point that people who cheat their way to power are unlikely to hold higher moral standards when it comes to handing out public contracts or when making decisions on planning and licensing. Respondents to the call for evidence made the point that it is harder to take out a municipal library book than it is to vote in a polling station administered by the same council. Others questioned why you have to produce ID when collecting a parcel from Royal Mail, but are not required to in order to get a ballot paper. The Electoral Commission and the OSCE's Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights have both recommended that voter ID, photo voter ID, is introduced into polling stations. They see the lack of ID requirement as far too trusting and open to abuse. They point to the system that's used in Northern Ireland as a good and effective way to deal with abuse. Organisations like the Association of Electoral Administrators and Solace and the National Police Chiefs Council all agree that ID is needed. In Northern Ireland, ID has been required for about 30 years. This was changed in 2003 to photo ID after it was found that fraud was evident in the use of non-photo ID that was being shown at polling stations. Since then, the system has been operating successfully. The Electoral Office of Northern Ireland administers the system for voluntary electoral ID cards for people who don't have any other form of photo ID, such as passports, driving licences and travel passes. The electoral ID card is free, so someone's lack of money is not a barrier to democratic participation. The ID shown at polling stations doesn't actually even have to be current. An expired passport is still okay if the photo is still a good likeness of the holder. Derby is one of 17 areas in this country that is considered to be at higher risk of electoral fraud. Sir Eric Pickles' report advises that the piloting of ID requirements at polling stations in local elections should initially be done in these 17 areas. If we volunteer, then this sends out a message that this council is determined to drive electoral fraud out of Derby. If we don't, then I'm sure people will draw their own conclusions. I hope that we can agree to volunteer. In the near future, as has been alluded to earlier in the meeting, we will be asked to vote on changing our electoral system of up by thirds to all-ups once every 4 years. Whichever system is chosen, the citizens of Derby need assurance that everything possible is being done to make sure that our elections are free and fair, and perhaps more importantly, seen to be free and fair. Voter photo ID, along with other measures that are outlined in the report, would give this assurance. The report covers a wide range of other areas where rules and law need to be strengthened. The police also would benefit from clarity in the law so that they are better able to enforce the law. And I trust that our Police and Crime Commissioner, who is he here, will be very keen to see that combating all types of electoral fraud is made a police priority here in the city. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Nater, I believe you're seconding it. Do you want to speak?
Madam Mayor, I formally second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Shankar, I believe you want to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a local authority, we take electoral fraud incredibly seriously. What is more, I freely admit that Derby has had its issues in the past. So I welcome the opportunity provided by the Liberal Democrats to once again discuss this important issue and bring to light some important questions that need to be answered. But I also reject the implication that there is something inherently wrong with the measures that we have in place here in Derby, and that we should be volunteering to participate in a yet-to-be-announced pilot scheme. To do so would be to admit we are somehow deficient and undermine the enormous amount of work carried out in recent years to strengthen our procedures. It is a testament to the work of the Director of Governance in her capacity as Returning Officer and Electoral Registration Officer, the Electoral Services team and our partners in Derbyshire Police that our safeguards in Derby are stronger now than ever. In fact, only last week the authority was given a clean bill of health by the Electoral Commission and praised for the steps we have taken to ensure the robustness of our electoral process. There are some who would seek to portray electoral fraud as an issue solely associated with ethnic minority communities, but that simply is not the case. Our recent experience in Derby and a brief look at Sir Eric Pickle's report, Councillor Skelton, shows that between 2005 and 2015 there has been 18 significant convictions for electoral fraud from all areas of the country and across the political spectrum. In fact, in Derby, electoral fraud has been most prevalent in leafy suburbs like Allestree recently, masterminded by the former Conservative Group Deputy Leader. The very fact that former Councillor Smalley is now residing at Her Majesty's pleasure is not evidence of failure, but of the strength of our electoral processes. But I think there are those in this chamber who also owe residents in Derby an explanation as to their level of involvement in this sad incident. And before I just start on that, CP 65, if any of you want to clarify anything, you can use that. I would invite Councillor Webb and Councillor Grimmerdale to put on record, as residents of Allestree, were you aware that Mr Smalley in fact resided in Borrowash when you signed his nomination papers? Councillor Hassel, as an Allestree councillor, Amanda Soloway's PA, and in your role within the local Conservative Party, were you complicit or simply oblivious? Councillor Holmes, do you still maintain that the resignation of your deputy at the time was due to personal circumstances?
Yes.
And not the investigation that was all...
Yes, Councillor Shankar, yes. Remember slander laws, Councillor.
Councillor Wood, as chair of the Conservative group and an experienced member of this council, are you not concerned by the fraudulent activity taking place on your watch?
Madam Mayor, I certainly am, but is this in order? Is this actually in debate?
Oh, come on, we're talking about electoral fraud.
I believe it is, Councillor Ward. I believe it is.
I would have thought a court case has started and finished, and if somebody put down a motion about it, we could discuss it. This is about Sir Eric Pickle's report. I don't see this has got anything to do with it.
Electoral fraud, Madam Mayor. What is more, Mr Smalley freely admitted he was seduced by the glamour of local politics whilst playing a leading role in the election of Amanda Soloway in Derby North. I understand Miss Soloway, coincidentally also is a resident of Borrowash, surely she could have advised that Richard Smalley was in fact not a Derby resident. And finally, Mr Smalley was the chairman of Mid-Derbyshire and Derby City Conservative Association, I believe. Was the Member of Parliament Pauline Latham not aware where her colleague lives? Whilst I suspect these questions will mainly remain unanswered, what is clear is that significant amounts of public time and expense have been wasted. As the Cabinet Member responsible for governance, I would like to thank all those involved in the investigation for their thorough work and apologise to the residents of Allestree and Derby who have been inconvenienced due to this by-election. I'm sure the Conservative group would echo these sentiments, and I invite them to take this opportunity to set the record straight.
Councillor Upton, you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion is both unnecessary and irrelevant. I haven't read all of the Pickles 50, but what is important is the pursuit of those in this city who have serious questions to ask and to answer with regard to fraud. They need to be exposed and where appropriate, prosecuted, which we will do with the utmost vigour. The election fraud case involving the imprisoned ex-councillor of Allestree, Richard Smalley, received national press coverage, including the Sunday Times front page. He has paid the price by losing his liberty and reputation, whilst others who knew or should have known or should have asked have not yet been brought to account and explained their role and their knowledge. Firstly, who did sign his nomination papers? There seems to be silence on this. The public have a right to know. The public has that right to know whether anyone was complicit or incompetent in signing these papers. Richard Smalley in court said he really enjoyed working in the general election campaign, presumably working closely with his MP, Pauline Latham, and Derby North MP, Amanda Soloway. Richard is or was the chair of Pauline's constituency, I understand, and Richard lives in Borrowash, as does Amanda Soloway. Why on earth did neither of them say to him that he could not stand in the local elections in Derby? Because they surely should have known that he wasn't eligible to. So I think it's important that those who signed the papers and those two MPs come into this chamber and explain quite clearly whether they knew, whether they asked,
Councillor Holmes and Councillor Webb.
And I think it's absolutely important that we get those answers, and the people of Derby do, because the people of Derby are now picking up that tab for something like tens of thousands of pounds in terms of fighting that election, and it's reasonable that they come here and publicly address those questions. What did they know, when, and who did they share it with? These are simple questions, and we expect simple answers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Does anybody else wish to speak on this? Councillor Nater, do you wish to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, after that outburst, I think that's a prime example of what I've always saying about this council, about gutter politics that it comes out with. Right? This wasn't the time and the place to do things like that. There is a time and place for that, and questions do need to be answered. Right? Quite simply, this was about the motion of the council actually volunteering to say that, you know, we have an opportunity to go up there and say, we'll take part in this pilot scheme. We're responsible people. That's where it was. Madam Mayor, I don't have nothing more to add.
Thank you. If there's no more comments, I think then we should... Oh, sorry, Councillor Banway.
Well, I don't agree with Councillor Nater there. This is not the appropriate place for elected members. You brought a motion about electoral fraud, and you don't want to talk about electoral fraud. And here's an example of electoral fraud. And let's be realistic. I mean, I've never seen the Tories in so much panic, conferring. I mean, did you see the panic on the front benches? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, Councillor Webb was up. I mean, I don't know what that means. He was clearly cited. Councillor Williams was conferring with the monitoring officer. You know what? If we could get hold of that nomination paper and do a fingerprint test, whose fingerprints would we find on it? I mean, a couple of names have been alleged. You know, we've spoken to people that have seen the nomination papers and have given us names to say they've seen it. It is a public document for a short period. You know, Councillor Grimmadell, this is your opportunity to get up and say you did not sign that. Councillor Webb, it's your opportunity to get up and say you did not sign that. Councillor Holmes, what is your involvement? What is the involvement of all the Conservative group? I mean, you seem to be complete in panic over this. You've championed the causes of electoral fraud. Pickles is your own government minister. And Paul Smalley's in jail over it. I mean, clearly there was an absolute desperation. Councillor Holmes, this is a reflection on your leadership. Clearly you weren't capable, or your group clearly didn't see you as capable of taking a challenge to this administration. And in desperation, you bought Councillor Smalley back. And look at the price that he's poorly paid. And I've worked with Councillor Smalley, and I have to say, I sympathise with the position he's put himself. But who has put him in that position? If members of your group knew that actually he didn't live in Alice Street, you should not have allowed him to sign those nomination papers. The checks and balances are there for that reason. The obvious question that needs to be asked is, does this person meet the criteria? And it's about the law. And for Councillor Nater to say, well, this is not the appropriate place, I mean, I'm sorry, Councillor Nater, if this isn't an example, I mean, I think you don't understand the law. You don't even understand your own motion. So it is a sad state of affairs, the predicament that a former councillor finds themselves, and I found myself as a fellow cabinet member with Councillor Morley when we were a joint administration with the Conservatives. But what I find concerning is we've got to find out in the public interest what was known by this Conservative group about individual councillors. So it is your opportunity to go on record now and to say what you knew and whether you signed those nomination papers, or if you didn't, come out. And the reality is, if you don't come out and say that statement, you put yourself in an awkward position where people will go out and speculate. You know, just come out and say it. I think that's the best thing to do. And now is the opportunity to say that.
Councillor Carr, do you have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, this issue seems to have got nicely sidetracked into an argument about one individual committing an illegal act, when the motion... Can you be quiet, please? When the motion was actually about fraud committed en masse. And I'd like to support what Councillor Shanker said about the officers and the work they have done so far. But I've just got one question to ask. If the work that has been done so far, and in my opinion it doesn't go far enough, why is the Pickles report, there's only one city in the country that gets a mention in the Pickles report, that's the city of Derby. This is a reputational issue for our city, and we need to do more. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to comment on this? Did you put your hand up, Councillor Anderson? No, okay. Then shall we move to the vote? All those in favour of the motion?
Yeah, Councillor Skelton can sum up.
Sorry, Councillor Skelton, do you want to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's a great shame. I think it's a great shame that people...
Can we be quiet, please?
I think it's a great shame that people did not take this in the spirit which it was intended, but use it for another terms of just slagging each other off. It's not about that. This report basically is saying that there are serious weaknesses in our system, the way we do things across the whole of this country, and it needs seeing to. What I'm asking people to do is saying, yes, we do agree with that, and we will be part of raising those standards above where we are at the moment with the law, modernising the law, bringing it into the 21st century, so we can assure the members of the public out there that our system is as near to fraud-proof as is possible. Please don't laugh, this is serious. Thank you. And I will be asking Madam Mayor for a recorded vote. I'm disappointed that Councillor Repton has said this is an unnecessary irrelevance.
Councillors, can we please be quiet while Councillor Skelton's speaking?
Disappointed that he feels that high standards in the conduct of elections are an unnecessary irrelevance. Very disappointing, Councillor Repton, very disappointing. I am very sorry, Madam Mayor, that not enough people probably will decide to vote for this. but we will be able to see who does vote for it and who doesn't. And I do ask that other councillors join me in standing and calling for a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Thank you. Can we move to the vote then, please? You want a recorded vote?
Would members please indicate whether they are for or against the motion as I read out their names? Councillor Afzal. Councillor Anderson. Against. Councillor Ashburner. For. Councillor Banwaite. Councillor Barker. For. Councillor Bayliss. Against. Councillor Bolton. Councillor Kerr. Councillor Carr. For. Councillor Dinser. Councillor Eldred. Councillor Evans. Councillor Froggatt. Councillor Graves. Councillor Grimmerdale. Councillor Harwood. Councillor Hassel. Councillor Heselgrave. Councillor Alison Holmes. Councillor Matthew Holmes. Councillor Hudson. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Ingle. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Keith. Councillor Jangir Khan. Councillor Shiraz Khan. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nater. Councillor Pegg. Against. Councillor Poulter. Councillor Raju. Councillor Rawson. Councillor Repton. Councillor Ralston. Councillor Russell. Councillor Sandhu. Councillor Shanker. Councillor Skelton.
For.
Councillor Smale. Councillor Stanton. Councillor Turner. Councillor Webb. Councillor West. Councillor Whitby. Councillor Williams. Councillor Wood. Councillor Wright. And the Mayor, Councillor Winter.
Okay, thank you. The motion is lost and the meeting has now ended. Thank you for your attendance.